In this segment, I'm going to look at how to use the Control and Manage Fabrics options. And they're found here on the Setup drop-down menu. We've got Choose Fabric and we've got Manage Fabrics. So perhaps what I'll do is talk about Choose Fabric first and then come back to Manage Fabrics. And generally speaking, when you choose the fabric, and I'll go ahead and just click Choose Fabric, this window comes up. And basically, I'm going to scroll to the top so you can see all the choices. So basically what you have here is pre-programmed settings that will give you the best stitch data for the different types of fabric you may be sewing on. So if I scroll through the list, you can see here all of the different types of fabrics that you could choose from this list. Now, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start a new design window. And I'll go with the same kind of demonstration that I started in the quick start with. So I'm just going to create a satin stitch line. And I'm going to take a close look at that. And I can see here that this satin stitch line has an edge run underlay. Now, the software selected that edge run underlay for me. All I did was chose to create a line, a satin line. The software decided that my satin line should have an edge run underlay. Now the software does that based upon the fabric settings, which I can see are set down here on my information bar for pure cotton. Now if I was to, let's say, select this satin stitch line, open up its properties, first of all I can see here in the underlay tab that it's set to have an edge run. Now if I choose the line stitch tab, I can see that it's set at 2 millimeters, and for example, if I changed it to be 4 millimeters wide, so twice as wide, I can see that the software has now decided that this satin column should have an edge run underlay and a zigzag, and it may be easier to see if I turn the 3D view off. So there you have an edge run and a zigzag. And again, that's based upon the fabric setting for pure cotton. Now, the point is, if we said Setup menu, choose fabric, and change from pure cotton to something like fleecy, which is something I demonstrated before in the quick start guide, which is more of a thick and stretchy fabric type. And if I say OK, you can see here that the satin column has now been converted to have an edge run and a double zigzag underlay. And so that's one of the things that's really great about Digitizer software is for people that are just getting started creating embroidery designs, you get really great stitch data because of the fact that we have these fabric settings. And so your ability to change the fabric is simply just Setup, Choose Fabric. Now the other option is Manage Fabrics. So when you choose Manage Fabrics, it's very similar to Choose Fabrics, except for now we have the ability to create our own fabrics. So all of the fabrics that were already created are actually set as being locked, which means they're pre-programmed by the software and they're not going to change. But what you do have the ability to do is create a new one. So if I go ahead and say new, and we'll call this be, I don't know, just Trevor's Fabric. And I'll based upon, so when it says based upon, it means it'll start with the settings for whatever, chiffon, or why don't we just choose pure cotton. So Trevor's, oh now it's changed the name, so I'll put the name back. Trevor's Fabric. Based upon pure cotton, and say OK. So that creates a new fabric choice. Now, within every fabric choice, you have a weave or embossed fill setting. You have a wide satin setting. You have a narrow satin setting. You have lettering settings. And you have the stabilizer notes. This is just a recommendation. So for example, weave embossed fill, basically any objects that get created that have a weave fill or an embossed fill, these are the settings that will be used. So the stitch length will be 4.2, the stitch spacing will be 0.4, the underlay type will be edge run plus weave, The first layer of underlay, which is the edge run, will be a 2mm stitch length. And the second layer of underlay, which is the weave, will have a 4mm stitch length and the stitch spacing of 2.8mm, and we'll have a stretchiness allowance of 0.6. So I could change any of those settings that I might like to. Wide satin, this means satin columns that are wider than, I'm not exactly sure the distance, but it's probably somewhere between 4 and 5mm where you go between the narrow satin and the wide satin. So this says the wide satin will get an edge run plus a zigzag. The narrow satin will just get an edge run. And when you do lettering, it'll have a center and underlay, it'll have this density, this stitch length, this stretchiness allowance. So those are the 4 different main settings you get to choose: wide satin, narrow satin, lettering, and weave and embossed fill. So you get to create your own fabrics, and you can manage those fabric settings. And so now you can see that Trevor's fabric is in the list, and because Trevor's fabric is not locked, we can come in and edit the settings for this, or we could delete it, or we could rename it. So that's Manage Fabrics, and that's Choose Fabrics, and it's certainly a very powerful part of the Digitizer software.